see if this works. Right. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay. I would like to welcome everyone, and starting with the most important of all, our students, and also the ISFAB team, and our, guests. We are really honored to have him in our midst this evening to encourage the students as they prepare themselves for the exam. So, without further ado, I will just read a little bit of a bio, and then so that we can kind of get a sense of who is with us in the room, in the virtual room tonight. So, Mr. Sizwe Nxasana holds a BCom honors, a chartered accountant qualifications. He was conferred with honorary doctorates by the Universities of Fort Hare, the Durban University of Technology, the University of Joburg, Walter Sisulu University, and UNISA. I've seen the recent one. So he's currently a PhD candidate at Aalborg, how I'm pronouncing it correct, University in Denmark. He is a former Chief Executive Officer of Telkom South Africa Limited and was responsible for its listing on the Johannesburg and New York Stock Exchanges. He was also the CEO of First Rand Banking Group from 2005 until he retired in September 2015. Mr. Nxasana serves as a chairman on various foundations and trusts and is a member of the Joint Advisory Board of Carnegie Mellon University Africa. He's the co-founder and chairman of the South African National Education Collaboration Trust. He's the founder and chairman of Nxasana Student Financial Aid Program, right? Which funds and supports students who come from poor and missing middle backgrounds in South Africa. And that's why we're here at UP. So Mr. Sizwe is now a social entrepreneur who founded Future Nation Schools in South Africa. He also founded Sifiso Learning Group, which is involved in EdTech, academic and non-academic publishing, and real estate. So, Mr. Nxasana, we are really honored to have you and to be addressed by you this evening. And thank you once again. Thank you.
No, thanks very much, Dr. Matavati. Thanks very much to you, the program managers who are here, the students who are here, the ISFAB team led by our CEO, Morne Tutoit, and it's a real pleasure to be here. And yeah, so just listening to my CV, I just want to relate a couple of things to you, because I'm a student as we speak. I'm a student at UNISA, even though they just conferred me with an honorary doctorate a couple of weeks ago. And as Dr. Matavati just indicated, I'm also a student at Aalborg University. I'm doing my PhD in education there. As a matter of fact, I've just finished at 5 o'clock, just after 5, I finished a meeting with my supervisor, where we're reviewing the work that I've done to date. And it's a very challenging journey because it's about studying, it's about researching, it's about writing. And as Dr. Matavati indicated, I also do a lot of other things. And often when you are a student, you are sort of on this treadmill. You're studying, it's hard, and certain things are frustrating. Like, for instance, I thought I'd written and finished writing a peer-reviewed paper, which must be published in a journal. And yesterday, my supervisor comes back, and my paper has so many comments and things that I haven't done properly and things that I need to do still. And I thought I was finished. So I'm not finished. So I probably need to spend another, I don't know, maybe a week or so trying to, do research, do literature review, write sections of the paper before it's actually sent for review by reviewers who could be coming from anywhere in the world. So what I'm telling you this story for is that I can understand exactly what you are going through, because I'm going through the same things. 3 weeks ago, I wrote an exam at UNISA, and we had a strategic planning session of the ISFA board, and I had to leave a little bit early because I was writing an exam for the education studies that I'm doing separately through UNISA. So it's a lot of work. And maybe just I'll reflect a little bit, because maybe given my age, I've figured certain things out. I've figured myself out more particularly because I understand how I learn. We all learn differently, and what works for me may not necessarily work for you. And we all need to find our rhythm. We all need to find our strengths. We all need to find what works for us, because what works for me does not necessarily work for my group that I may be studying with, may not work with other people that I may be talking to. So I've managed to figure that out over many years, obviously, of studying and doing exams and so on. And a lot of you may think, well, why am I doing all of this? Everybody talks about lifelong learning, and I'm involved, as Dr. Matapati indicated. I run businesses, I'm in education now. And before this, before education, as you heard in my brief bio, I qualified as an accountant many years ago. I started what is now NSG or SNG Grant Thornton, which is the 5th largest audit firm in the country. I then branched out and became the CEO of Telkom for 8 years. And after that, I was the CEO of the First Rand Banking Group, which is FNB, WesBank, RMB, and a lot of other small companies like Ashburton and so on. So I was the CEO there for 10 years. And for me, just to understand my thinking process, and this started actually when I finished matric, I realized a couple of things. When I was in my, what is now called grade 11, it was called Form 4 then, I used to work, and I had this friend, his name was called Joe. And we're in a boarding school just outside of Pinetown called Marian Hill, St. Francis College. I wasn't smart, and depending on what kind of teacher I had teaching me, I could either be at the bottom of the class or towards I was never at the top of the class. Yes, if I worked a little bit better and a little bit harder, maybe I was in the top 10, But the couple of things which I figured out when I was doing Form 4 is that my friend Joe didn't have to study too much. All he needed to do was just to use your normal study time. And at boarding school, we had to study between 6 and 8 in the evening. And he would be fine, and then he gets A's. I could never get A's if I worked, sort of following his rhythm. So, but what I figured out was that if I worked just a little bit harder than the next person, I could never beat Joe. He was just the smartest person that I've ever known, actually, because especially when it comes to things like mathematics and statistics and all of this, I mean, he just creamed those kind of subjects. But I figured that if I just worked a little bit harder and focus on certain things and figure out how I actually learn myself, I could actually do better. I also started to understand that a lot of other people, for instance, can work till late. I could never do that. In other words, my cutoff time for work, whether it is academic work or it is sort of work, in other words, companies where I work.
Sizwe, you've just muted yourself, and or somehow you've gone on mute for a second.
I didn't touch anything, so I'm not sure how that happened. But I'm not sure where you lost me.
Just about 30 seconds.
Okay, about 30 seconds. So I was still just saying, I figured that I'm an early morning person. I'm not a late night person. And therefore, you know, I can't cope with people who are able to work 10 o'clock, 11, 12 o'clock, and so on. I'm completely dysfunctional when I'm trying to work, you know, late at night. And I guess those are the smart people. You know, some of us, I'm quite happy waking up at 2:30 in the morning. So I'll have to sleep early. And I wake up, you know, at 2:30 in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I can work, you know, when my mind is fresh, when there's no noise. So I'm the kind of person who sort of works and learns much better that way. So all of this is about self-discovery. It's about discovering what works for you, having insights about your interests, your study patterns, your work patterns, and make sure that that works for you. Even today, you know, as I'm doing all of these things that I'm doing, including my PhD and so on, my regular day, if I'm not under pressure, and I'm under a lot of pressure right now, so my day typically right now starts at 3 a.m. in the morning. And then, you know, I have to do gym for an hour. That's really, really important because a healthy body feeds a healthy mind. So I have to do it every day. I go to gym 7 days a week without fail. Even when I'm traveling, I try and put in some time just to get oxygen into my body. But once I've finished doing that, then I have a shower and I start to work. And sometimes I work before I gym a little bit, and then I'll go to gym and so on. The important thing is that, one, I'm clear about my pattern as well as my time management. I'm clear about what works for me. I'm also clear about what I'm trying to achieve. In other words, where am I going? Maybe when I was younger, it may not necessarily have been clear at that stage, but I was just driven by the pursuit to succeed, the pursuit to acquire knowledge, and the pursuit to do the things that I thought I wanted to do, you know, for myself. Maybe just to tell you a little bit of a story. So when I finished matric, I didn't know what I was going to do, so I took a gap year. We didn't call it a gap year because that's a fancy word. I simply just, you know, stayed at home and I found a job in a clothing factory. So I was a laborer in a clothing factory. So I worked there, and then, you know, I applied for bursaries and so on. I ended up getting a bursary where I was going to go and study to be a land surveyor. But, you know, this bursary provider said, let's expose you to what land surveying is. So I was 17 years old and ended up going to this construction site somewhere in the middle of Zululand, if you know a place called Tugela Ferry or Msima. And, you know, it was a lot of fun for a 17-year-old because, you know, they taught me how to do surveys, and they taught me how to drive big trucks and tractors, which is a lot of fun. You know, when you're a boy of 17 years old, suddenly you know how to drive, you know, big trucks, because obviously when you do surveys, you must know how to cut the land. You must be able to climb on a grader, you know, those big tractors, and show them how it actually works. But I figured that wasn't for me after 6 months because there were snakes, it was very hot, and I decided, no, I need to sit in an air-conditioned office. So that's why I ended up going to Fort Hare to go and study a Bachelor of Commerce. And when I got there, my very first year, you know, Professor Wiseman Kuhlu had just qualified in March of 1976 as the very first Black chartered accountant in the country. And he was a lecturer at our university. So a lot of us became chartered accountants because he became one, because it's really difficult to become something you've never seen before, something you've never imagined. So just looking at him, he didn't lecture to us as first years, he lectured to, you know, senior students at university. But for me, I started to sort of visualize that I could be like Professor Wiseman Kutlu. So I sort of formulated this picture in my own mind, which is quite an important lesson for all of us, that you must visualize what you want to become after you have completed your studies. What is it? And it's a question that we must ask ourselves all the time, because that's why I'm still work in progress, because for me, it is about understanding yourself, having insights about the kind of person that you are, but it's also about trying to figure out what your potential is. I'm still trying to figure out what my potential is, what my full potential. That's why I do a lot of the things that I do. Because what I've understood is that a lot of us limit our abilities. So we limit our abilities to work, to achieve, to do a lot of things that we could do, because we either allow other people to put us in a box, or otherwise we put ourselves and our minds in a box, and we limit ourselves that way. So it is for me about still exploring and trying to find that potential. What is Sizwe Nxasana's potential? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out. So that's one of the reasons why I then decided, after I had finished and qualified as a chartered accountant, and I was about 20, sort of my late 20s, about 27 years old, that I will never stay in one area for a period of more than 10 years. There was no science to it. It was just a decision that I took for myself, that, I will go and explore and find new avenues, new opportunities, new horizons, for myself. So that's why I'd left the company where I was employed, and I was, earning really well. That company is now part of Ilovo Sugar, with the head office in Durban. And I started, what now became SNG Grant Thornton, Sizwe. It was initially Sizwe and Company. So I ran that for 10 years, and the firm did really well. We certainly had offices throughout the country, employing more than 400 people, and we're doing, a lot of work, especially providing training platforms and a home for a lot of Black trainees who wanted to become chartered accountants like us. But after that 10 years, the time was up. So I was the CEO of the firm, and I left it. I left the firm, and that's where I ended up at Telkom. And in Telkom, I learned new skills. And normally it takes me about 2 years to really immerse myself in a new sector, in a new industry, to understand the context, the jargon, the people, the insights of that particular sector. And it's complete immersion as I'm doing so. So I ended up in telecom, and I knew everything that needed to be known about telecoms at the time. The transition from auditing to telecoms was quite a challenging one. And after that, I then left and ended up in banking. So, and it was the same playbook. In other words, I had to figure out and learn all that needed to be learned about banking. You talk to people, people on the ground, you understand what it is, what banking and financial services is all about, and so on. And then after that, I then started the journey in education. So I'm now in education. I started schools after I left First Rand. And for me, starting schools as a social enterprise was one thing, but understanding education and becoming an expert in it, which is the same thing that I would have done in financial services or telecoms or auditing, is about immersion. It's about investing the time and effort in learning about that industry, and really being able to make a difference in that industry, being able to grow yourself. So part of this journey of moving from one place to the other, as I indicated earlier, is about finding my purpose, finding my potential and exploring what that potential actually is and what it looks like. And it has been an amazing journey for me because I've grown in the process. I can sit with people in telecoms and I speak their speak. I can speak in banking, if you like. I'm still involved with the accounting and auditing profession, even as we speak. I work with SICA and those kind of things. So, and this is what I was saying, that, you know, for me, just taking from my personal experience, it is about a number of things. So the lessons just from what I've said is, it's about, one, understanding yourself and your insights. In other words, having an insight about who you are, and then crafting your journey around what works for you, which may not necessarily work for the other person. Managing your time, because time is a limited resource. And that's why, for me, a lot of people often ask me about balance. My life is perfectly balanced, but in a way that actually allows me to do those things that are important to me. So people will say, well, do you play? I don't play golf. I spend a lot of time either with my family or working. That for me are the two important priorities that I have for my life. So I don't socialize a lot. I'm actually an introvert, you know, so you're not going to find me, yeah, now occasionally, maybe during holidays in December and so on, I'll spend time with friends. But my friends, and I have the same set of friends that I've had for many, many years, for more than 30 years, they know that they're probably only going to see me around December, or otherwise we meet at weddings or funerals. So we sort of at that stage where our children are getting married or things like that. So that's where we're going to meet. But I'm happy with where I am, is the point I'm trying to make. And it's about choices. We all have the latitude to make choices for ourselves, and not choices that are made for us by others. We have to make choices, you know, for ourselves. And just doing that and understanding that, you know, exploring my full potential can only happen if I'm physically healthy. And if I try and eat well, that's really, really important. I didn't always do it at your ages when you are younger, but as you grow older, you start to understand the importance of physical exercise, of eating reasonably or responsibly, and also of keeping yourself active. You know, you understand the importance of those things, and keeping yourself surrounded by people who really matter to you. Maybe when you're young, you have a lot of people, you know, and a lot of friends that may not necessarily matter. But as you grow older, there are people that really matter, that feed your soul, that, you know, you also feed off, because we are social beings. That's why COVID was so difficult for a lot of us, because we were locked up and we couldn't connect with other people. So having connections with people is really important, especially those people that inspire you. I never surround myself with any of the people who have negative energy. I just don't do that, because it's counterproductive for myself to be surrounded by people who have negative energy. So it is about that, but also setting very clear goals. So as I told my story about just changing from one sector to the other and doing a lot of the things that I do now, including studying and running businesses and so on. So all of this is about setting goals of things that I want to achieve, that we want to achieve, because sometimes it's working with us as a collective, maybe as a family, or, you know, in a company and that kind of thing. And all of those things matter a lot. And that's why even now, as I'm going through my PhD project in Denmark, and I travel back and forth, and, you know, doing a PhD in Europe is not really that easy, because I have to do coursework. So I travel in Europe back and forth now and again. Just in the next 10 days, I will be in Sweden, because I need to be at the University of Stockholm. to go and do a course there. Then I come back, then I go to Denmark and so on. But that is all possible because those are the things that matter to me, because the goals that I want to achieve, and therefore it doesn't feel like it's something that is painful for me to do. It's things that are a journey towards meeting that objective that I've set for myself. So I've spoken a lot, and I just want to say a couple of things. One, to thank the team at ISFAP, including the program managers, for the support that they provide to you as students, because you really matter to us. ISFAP is all about how do we make the success of our students that are funded possible. How do we make sure that we are really creating conditions by not just providing financial aid and support, but by providing the support which can only be done, especially through the hard work of our team at ISFAP and the program managers on the ground. So we really, really appreciate the work that you do, and hopefully the students appreciate that too. And I also just want to say, going towards exams is a very stressful time. I understand it. I'm going through it myself, and sometimes you fail. And the story I didn't tell you is that I wrote the CA exam. I'm not, as I said earlier, I know my limits. I'm not that particularly smart person. I try and work as hard as I can. So I failed the CA exam 3 times, but that failure, those 3 attempts or unsuccessful attempts that I had, taught me a lot about myself. It taught me a lot about my resilience, my determination, the stuff that I'm really made of. Because I honestly believe, even though, we don't work hard to go and fail, but there's a lot more to be learned from failure than there is to be learned from success. Because as long as you reflect, why did you fail, and you learn from those mistakes, and sometimes you still fail, even after having tried to learn from your mistakes, it happens. But it is about understanding that, failure is just a journey towards success. It's a journey towards success, and it is about how do you actually get yourself up? How do you pull yourself up, dust yourself off, and go back and pursue that which you really want to pursue? And success is just around the corner. And actually, when you do succeed, you're not going to be written on your forehead. I'm not written on my forehead that I failed, the CA exam as many times as I did. So yes, good luck for your exams. It is stressful. It is going to be tough, but you will make it as long as you work hard. You put in, those hours. You practice. You will definitely, eventually succeed. So thank you very much. I'm sure a lot of you would have some comments or questions that you may want to pose. Are you there? Dr. Matawat, are you there?
Thank you, Sizwe. I think we can open.
Yeah, if I just wanted to say that she's not here anymore. She
okay.
had a conference.
Okay, good.
But I think we're open to take questions. Yeah. Guys, you can raise your hands if you want, if you have a question for Sizwe.
And even if you want to pop something in the chat box.
Yeah. I see we have a question. It says, good day, sir. How many PhDs are you looking to have?
So I don't know, to be honest. So the ones that they're not PhDs, they are honorary doctorates. So University of South Africa, University of Johannesburg, DUT, Forte, all of those are honorary doctorates. They are recognition of some of the work that I do, but I didn't have to write exams for them. The one that I'm doing at Aalborg University in Denmark, that's actually the first PhD. So, but is that the last one? I don't know. I don't know. I'm probably going to, do another one. I don't know. At the moment, I'm just focused on, I have to finish this. I'm supposed to finish it in 2025, but I'm trying to figure out if I can pull it off and finish next year, which means cutting almost a whole year, which means a lot of work.
Okay, and next we have, how would you advise a young person who just graduated financially and more around aspects of life?
Well, just a couple of things. If you've just graduated, normally you still trying to figure out what you're going to do. Some people know what they're going to do. So there are a couple of things. You finish, you start working. So you're trying to balance work, and maybe you are starting a family, which is some of the things that some of us did. Because I remember, when I was graduating from my honors, BCom honors, I actually got married on the day that I got my results, and I was still going to do, sort of all my board courses to be able to write the CA exam. So it really depends where you see your life. I think just setting clear objectives. They may not be 100% clear, but just to try and visualize. When you go to interviews, people will often ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years or in 10 years? That may appear to be sort of a very, generic kind of question, but it is a question about reflecting about what you really want to do with yourself and with your life. And it's a very important question because, as I was saying, all of us need to ask ourselves a question. What is our potential? What is our full potential? And how are we going to get there? How are we going to explore what that full potential looks like? And obviously, we live in an environment, especially coming from some of our backgrounds and families that we have, that you still need to support your siblings, maybe you still need to support your family. But there's one thing I just want to say about that, the issue of black tax. Black tax is real, it's there. But at the end of the day, also, I think especially as South African people, as South African blacks, let me be very, very specific. I come across a lot of people who want instant gratification. In other words, they want to buy nice cars, nice houses, and they're not prepared to study. When I go to a lot of the universities in South Africa, especially at the level of masters, at the level of PhD, the number or percentage of South African blacks drops precipitously. You're going to find a lot of people who come from Zimbabwe, from Malawi, from Tanzania, Kenya, from Ghana, Uganda, and so on, in our own great universities, and less of South Africans. So it is an issue that I think we need to address and we have to talk about because, yes, of course, we have families to support, we have siblings to support, but I think this issue of progressing, of even, getting into entrepreneurship. I'll just tell you a quick story. There's a program which I'm involved in Cape Town, which is an incubator for young people who are getting into particularly education technology. And they create this platform, and you live in a commune. They sort of give you stipends to develop your ideas and concepts and test them and get ready for market. And you find that, so when I go to this place, it's called Engine. You find a lot of people from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Uganda, and very few from here. And when you ask the question, they say, no, well, South Africans say, no, they want jobs. Maybe it's how we are educated. That's how we are taught. We're taught to go and look for jobs, not to become entrepreneurs. But I'm just saying, those are some of the things that we need to consider as young, newly graduated people. What do we want to do? Do you want to pursue postgrad? Do you want to start a business? Do you want to progress in corporate? And if so, how are we going to go about it? Those are some of the questions, and only you can answer those questions.
Thank you. The next two, I'll combine into one because they're essentially asking, how do you stay motivated under times of heavy pressure and workload? How do you stay disciplined and motivated?
It's all a state of mind. It's how you get your mind focused on the end game. Don't focus on the process too much. I mean, the process is important, but focus on the price. In other words, what are you trying to achieve? If it is about your degree, it's about your next job once you graduate, it is about whatever it is. For me, that's what motivation is about. Am I always motivated? No. I'll be lying to you if I say I'm, and sometimes, I procrastinate. I do. I procrastinate, and, I'll see it and I'll do everything else except the work that I'm supposed to do. So, we all do that. But at the end of the day, when the crunch time hits, I know exactly what I need to do. So crunch time sometimes is self-imposed, sometimes it's imposed on me because we have exams and you have deadlines and that kind of thing. So, all those things do matter. So for me, it is about what are you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? When you sit there and maybe lie down and close your eyes, what do you see? What do you see yourself doing? I found that to be particularly important for me. And because what it does is sort of having that conversation with myself makes me not just reflect, but it also, I sort of visualize, this is a kind of, I can see myself sitting in this office. I can see myself working with these and those people. I can see myself doing X, Y, Z. And normally just talking to myself about that normally actually happens. Yeah.
Thank you, Sizwe. Next is, how do you deal with the fear before each exam? I'm not sure if you get scared of your exams at this point.
No, I do get scared. Maybe not as much as when I was young, because I have less to lose now. So, I just give it my best, and to the point where I cut my losses, and I'm going to go and sit for the exam and see what happens. But it is about preparation. It is about practice and practice. And because if you are well prepared, of course, being scared and fear is some of those things that, comes to us as humans, because normally that's how you trigger your adrenaline. That's how you trigger. It's like, for instance, in any situation, you're going to speak and you have never spoken, in front of a group of people before. You're going to do something that you've never done before. You're going to go through maybe an oral exam, which can be very scary. But, once you get going, once you sit down, you read that question paper and you start writing. If you've practiced enough and you've prepared enough, that fear goes away immediately. It's like, for instance, even when you're talking in front of people you never done before, the minute you stand there and talk to people, if you have prepared well enough, you practice, you've looked at yourself in the mirror and so on a couple of times, when you stand there, that fear that you have just before you start writing or you start speaking actually goes away.
I understand. I understand. I hope everyone else understood. Our second last question. I like this one. I'm gonna ask it. I'm gonna give you context. So if you, for example, you did accounting and there's a few possibilities in terms of the career path to take, and sometimes without experience, you don't really know which path is best for you. So the student is asking, if you are now done with your studies and you need to choose a path, where do you start?
Yeah, again, it depends where you see yourself, and you've got to do quite a bit of research in answering that question. So often a lot of people just have life happen to them. So you mustn't just have life happen to you. Yeah, sometimes we make mistakes. Have I made a lot of mistakes in terms of career choices, including companies that I join or organizations that I join? Of course I have, many times. Here's one thing I often tell a lot of people that I mentor. Managing your career is a very active process that you yourself must do. And it's a very, I don't want to use the word selfish, but it's a thing that you have to do for yourself. And you have to take a very active process of managing your life, of managing your career. And I often say this to people, like for instance, some people would, they go and
Sorry, you've gone on mute again.
there must be a gremlin here because I'm not touching anything. So maybe I don't know. I don't know what's going on. So anyway, so I was saying managing your career is a very active process. Sometimes you have people who accumulate degrees and papers and diplomas and so on, and they hope those papers are going to talk for them. Even when they get into companies and maybe in terms of career progression and so on, that doesn't actually happen. You have to speak for yourself. People must know what you want. And sometimes you have to explore. And yes, I'm not suggesting that people must job hop, move from one company to the other, because that can also mess up your CV. But I am saying sometimes, especially when you've just qualified as an accountant, there's a choice of do you work in industry, do you do your training in the industry, or do you go to an audit firm? It's quite interesting. And I did an exercise, quite an extensive exercise for SAICA about 3 years ago. The quality of training that you get these days in industry as opposed to audit firms is really just as good. And sometimes in certain cases, depending on which company you join, it can actually be even better than what you get in an audit firm. So it is about doing your own research, seeing which industries talk to you and talk to your interest, and then pursuing those.
Thank you. I think one student is just asking for the specific name of the educational tech program that you mentioned. Not sure if he's interested in pursuing it as well.
Yeah, well, it's called Ingini. Ingini as in INJINI.
Oh, Zulu. Okay,
Yeah,
I'll type
Ingini,
it here.
which means an engine
Mm.
in English, but it's written in Sizwe.
Okay. I think this is our last question. How would you advise someone who wants to be like you in terms of being a CEO of big companies or an entrepreneur? What would you advise them to do while elevating to the top?
Well, my advice would be don't overthink it. A lot of people sort of overthink it. Let me just tell you how I went about it. So the first thing for me was to create a company, Sizwe and Company. And if you create a company, you appoint yourself as a CEO, right? You don't have other people appointing you. And then you understand the kind of skills or competencies that you need, because you may be trained as an engineer, as a medical doctor, as a data scientist, or whatever. There's one thing, and I was talking to one of our teachers actually today, that, there, and I'm generalizing here, you can either choose to be a specialist in a field, in engineering or data science or actuarial science or accounting, which is fine. There's no right or wrong here. But if you want to be in a position of a CEO, you have to understand that there are very few fields where you become a CEO as a specialist, because being a specialist is about knowing a lot about less and less. As a CEO, you need to acquire generalist skills. In other words, you need to understand a little bit about people. People is really, really important. How to motivate people, how to work with people, how to collaborate with people, and so on. You need to understand finance, you need to understand marketing, you need to understand whatever, production management, and so on. So you got to acquire generalist skills to become a CEO, because there are not many specialists who actually become CEOs when you think about it. So your foundation degree or honors is fine, but then you have to go and find all these other skills that actually make you an effective CEO, which is about knowing a lot about a lot of different things and reading a lot about a lot of different things, not just your area of specialization.
Thank you. I know I said it was the last one, but last one. I seem to have skipped a question. A student asked, how possible is it to do postgraduate studies abroad?
It is possible, absolutely possible. It's just very expensive, especially given where our rand is against the euro, the dollar, and all other foreign currencies. So it is possible. There are bursaries out there. There are bursaries that, especially not at an honors level, typically, you're going to get bursaries at master's level, quite a few at PhD level. But yeah, it is possible. And perhaps, there's something that ISFAP can do for those people who want to pursue postgrads overseas, is essentially just to create a catalog of scholarships or bursaries that are available to study overseas. They are there. But as I said earlier, a lot of them not at honors level. At masters, you start getting a few. At PhD level, you get a lot more.
Thank you. Anne, our Stellenbosch program manager, has a question. Anne?
Good evening, Dr. Nxasana. We're so privileged to have you so much for taking the time. I was wondering, I think very often funding is available for course degree programs in high demand. And I think often, when you choose a degree and you have funding and you maybe realize that you're not sure you're in the right degree, would you say that it's necessarily, the first degree that you study, that it's necessarily inhibiting, or should one look differently at the career that you, the degree that you enroll for, and see it as a stepping stone rather than, that you are like caught in a particular field of speciality? I think often students are in a degree and they're unsure whether they've made the right decision. What advice would you give to our students?
So yes, I mean, that's a really important question. It's a question also that I get quite often, because often when we choose degrees, we are either influenced by parents or teachers, and we choose things that sometimes we don't even understand, and when you get there, we may not even like them. But when you are young, I mean, obviously it is about managing a lot of variables, particularly the issue of money. It's because, if you decide, well, in your first year, I chose the wrong degree and I really don't like it and I hate what I'm doing. There are practical implications if you want to switch. Practical implications are you still able to get someone who's going to finance your studies if you're not self-funding? And if not, you may find yourself having to finish that degree, even though you don't really like it. But here's the thing. With a junior degree, it's really easy. And it's all a state of mind. It's all about, how you either limit yourself or not limit yourself in terms of your thinking. Because any degree gives you knowledge and gives you foundational skills and some competencies, which actually allow you to change course and go and do something else, especially at a postgrad level. So as you start to do your honors, your masters and so on, you can change course completely and then start to do, I know people who studied to become engineers, then they are in financial services now. I know people who started, maybe doing medicine or MBCHB as an example, and they go and do something, they go and do maybe an MBA, and they end up doing something completely out of clinical, medicine or being clinicians and so on. I know people who started off, maybe in education, they end up being CAs. I know people who started off, with pharmacy degrees, and they ended up, in a completely different world. And it is about understanding that we are all capable of changing our course, and it's just a question of just how we limit ourselves. I see, Mortney, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Sizwe. Thank you so much. That was so inspirational and so valuable. I just wanted to comment on the international scholarships. We often share international scholarship opportunities on our LinkedIn alumni LinkedIn page. So I would really encourage all of the students online to join the ISFAP alumni LinkedIn page. I did copy and paste the link in the chat. And then I also pasted the Department of Higher Education and Training. They have an international scholarship for South Africans page. So I also shared that link. Also a very, very useful link to follow. They share all the scholarships that many of the other countries offer to South African students. And as Sizwe said, it's often for master's or PhD studies. So once you get to that level and you want to go and study abroad, that would definitely be the place to have a look. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Morney.
Thank you, Morney. And do you have a role model, someone you look up to, someone that inspires you? Yeah.
So it's typically not one person. I told the story of Professor Wiseman Kutlu when I was, a first-year student. I didn't get to talk to him or meet him or anything like that. In fact, I was saying to him the other day, because I now work with him. I work with him in a project. There's a foundation where we're supporting schools, public schools. So, I'm now working quite closely with him. And I was saying to him, he was sort of this distant person, but he was an inspiration to me and to quite a few others. My mother, who was an amazing woman, my mother there was 7 of us, so I had 6 siblings. And she was just this person who, she started matric when she was 50 years old, and then went on to do a degree and an honors and a master's after that, So for me, maybe my sense of lifelong learning comes from there, that, I saw my mother do a matric in her 50s and finish degrees and carry on well into her 60s. My dad died very early. you know, he died when he was 50 years old. But there's something called, you know, my father was an alcoholic. So I observed him as I was growing up, you know, just the impact of alcohol on him. We didn't understand alcoholism as a disease then. So, but that became quite an inspiration for me to say, well, you know, here was this man who was my father, who was really smart, but he had a problem with alcohol. And I decided, you know, because there were a lot of things that I'm taking after him, that I will model my life to avoid some of the things that he did. So, you know, that's a role model in a, you know, in an interesting kind of way.
Thank you. Let me just do a final run through to see if we have.
Yeah, I just want to
any.
say from the University of Pretoria's side, it was actually my idea after, so I'm Marley, after you came to speak to us at the project managers conference at the beginning of the year. I told Dr.
Thank you.
Hardy, cannot have you not come and speak to our students, because you were so inspirational. And I feel like all of the stuff you mentioned in tonight's session, it's stuff that I tell the students, it's topics we cover every day during the year. But now just hearing someone that is a great role model, just repeating that, and you know, just telling us, okay, everything is going to be okay. You worked so hard for this, is so reassuring. And yeah, I think all of the students needed this. And I'm so glad. Thank you for your time that you could come and speak to all of the students across the nation. This is really a big night. So yeah, just thank you so much for your time and for just making time for ISFAP and our students.
No, thanks very much. I really appreciate it, and I've really enjoyed interacting with you guys and answering your questions. And good luck. Good luck as you prepare for your exams. You will be okay.
Thank you very much, Sizwe, and good evening to everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.